Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of IARF's Weekend Session. My name is Cyrus Winnett. I'm the association's Legislative and Policy Analyst, and I will be filling in for Josh Evans today. But Josh will not be totally missed. The second half of today's edition will feature an interview between him and Representative Ron Sandack of the 81st District, who is the Minority Chamber's House Floor Leader. The interview between Josh and Representative Sandack really gets to the question of how is the governor's turnaround agenda, that is his proposals for issues such as right to work and unemployment insurance reform and workers' compensation reform, how is that tied to the budget building process? And in the representative's opinion, his perspective, how are we going to work towards a May 31st adjournment date, and how is moving past a May 31st adjournment date and pushing session far into the summer going to impact the negotiations on the governor's turnaround agenda and the FY16 budget? Specifically, of course, our core interests are the community-based services and supports that are provided to individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, mental illnesses, and substance use disorders. I would just like to say to everyone who's out there before the interview begins that we are now through the second week of May, which means there are now 23 calendar days left in the month and 18 session days. There's little time frame to put together many of the moving pieces that are necessary in order to come to compromise on the issues that are going to be discussed in the interview. That means, as far as our advocacy efforts within the association, it now is the vital time in which we need all of you to participate to keep our voice strong and ensure that legislators prioritize community-based services when they are having negotiations on the budget and other issues. So without further ado, please enjoy the interview between Josh and Representative Sandack.
Representative Sandack from the 81st District, thank you for joining us today for this week's IARF Weekend Session. Couple of things. It seems as if, at least in this building recently, there's a lot of talk that the governor's turnaround agenda is sort of tied to the construction of the state fiscal year 2016 budget. As an organization of not-for-profit service providers primarily funded by the state, can you share with us your thoughts on the governor's turnaround agenda and what service providers should know about aspects of that turnaround agenda?
Sure. I mean, there's multiple aspects to the turnaround agenda, but at its core is this fundamental theory that the way government has undertaken its business and provided its services needs to fundamentally change. So there are aspects to the turnaround agenda which many people know of, like term limits, fair maps for redistricting purposes. There are aspects of trying to consolidate units of government so that they're more efficient and lean. We don't have so many. And then there are financial aspects like, frankly, pensions and the need for pension reform, even though we had a bill and it's still in front of the Supreme Court. I can't remember exactly how many items there are, but at its core, it's a talking point, if you will, about changing the way Illinois conducts its business, provides services to its residents, governs budgets, and does things fundamentally different. Many people I know like some portions of the agenda, some like a majority of the agenda, some like none of it, or all of it. Part of what we do here in Springfield ultimately is find ways to hopefully compromise and come to a conclusion. With respect to it being tied to the budget, I never heard that it's tied explicitly, but it wouldn't surprise me if this governor is attempting to use some level of leverage to try and change the way things get done. You know this, many of the viewers know this, he's the chief executive officer of the state of Illinois. He's a Republican, but here at the Capitol, in the House of Representatives, it's resoundingly Democratic run. It's a 71-47 advantage. Speaker Madigan's rules here. On the other side of the rotunda for the Senate, it's decidedly Democratic as well. President Cullerton has a comfortable majority, a supermajority, Democrats over Republicans there. So in order to get things done here, there needs to be a little bit of triangulation, a little bit of leverage, and a whole lot more compromise. There have been working groups on many aspects of the turnaround agenda, and there are working groups on the budget as well. They are bipartisan and bicameral. Whether we're going to get to a deal before the end of the month is the seminal question. I still tend to be an optimist, just because I have to, I think. When you're in Springfield long enough, pessimism is easily understood and absorbed. I choose to believe things will get done because they have to, out of necessity. Will certain aspects of the turnaround agenda be required to be passed before a budget comes? I just can't tell you. Certainly Speaker Madigan and President Cullerton can run their own budget, pass it, and get it to the governor, who I suspect would not sign it. So that's where the compromise needs to occur. With respect to your organization and its members, and by the way, there are a number of wonderful not-for-profit, community-based, professional providers that are mainly reliant on state funding in my district. I meet with them frequently. Many of them provide extraordinary service and do so at a value. My humble suggestion, I've told this to my friends, is hold on, because this is a bumpy ride. Focus on your core mission. There's been mission spread in all aspects of life. Some groups are really good at X and they decided that Y and Z ended up being nice services to provide as well. I would, again, humbly suggest staying mission focused and core centric, and come down here and talk to us and let us know what it is you're doing, what it is you're doing well, and how you're using state dollars efficiently, effectively, and as transparently and as high level of accountability as possible, and make the case. No one wants to cut services. I mean, it's especially sacrosanct services to the most needy, the most vulnerable, the least capable of being able to tend to themselves and for themselves. And of course, no one likes to throw taxes on people either. So we have these, conflicting situations. Tax him or her, but don't cut mine, and vice versa. That kind of paradigm is going to change, because out of necessity it will. I suspect well-run organizations, private sector, public sector, whether they're all or some funded from the state, will be asked to prove up what they do, how they do it, and be asked to do it better. And they may be asked to do it with a little less money. That may all seem unfair, and to a certain degree it is. I would still say, however, that the men and women of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and I suspect the governor, all know that we have to be tending to the most vulnerable, the least capable of handling their own affairs, and be sensitive to them. So I think the endeavor this coming budget, next 3 weeks, will be to keep priorities focused, make sure we take care of people, make sure they're held accountable to us and the taxpayers, and find a way to right the ship that is the state of Illinois. Not just, it's not going to get done in this budget session, but it's going to be incremental steps. But this is hopefully year one. Whether you call it the turnaround budget, whether you call it Project Illinois, whatever you call it, fixing the state's fiscal affairs is critical, because we can't afford more out-migration and to continually bury ourselves in debt and indebtedness, because all we're doing is hurting our future. And so I'm convinced we have an opportunity to start the turnaround, the fix. We just need a little bit of backbone, a little bit of fortitude, and some help, frankly, from understanding citizens, because this is going to not be painless. Because if it were, we would have already done it.
Sure. There are three things I keyed on, 3 words in particular: budget, compromise, and incremental. As you may know, the association I represent was opposed to the numerous level of cuts that were proposed by the governor to DD mental health services. At the same time, acknowledging our interpretation that he did take steps to preserve some level of core and essential services, which we very much appreciate. At the same time, the budget seems to, in our opinion, the level of cuts that we see in others seem as if we're trying to right the fiscal ship in one fiscal year, so to speak. Mentioning incremental, mentioning compromising budget. Do you think that, or would it be your estimation, or what are your thoughts? Do you think we can get to a point, be it by the end of May, be it by the end of June or July, what have you, where we can have a state fiscal year 16 budget that walks back from some of those cuts, maybe includes some revenues? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, but this is one of those, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so the governor's budget was just that. It was a proposed budget, and it was initial. I know lots of people, for good reason, objected, screamed, and yelled because they had to. I was a former mayor, so as you know, the mayors have been vociferous in their objection to the potential reduction of the local government distributive share. I get it. Shared sacrifice means someone else shares. You guys share amongst yourselves. But to your point, I'm convinced there is a grand bargain, there is an opportunity. I don't believe this governor thinks for a minute we're going to fix the budget this year and things are going to be rosy, going forward. So I believe it will be incremental. I do believe it has to get done by way of compromise. The numbers, the composition of this House, that Senate, and this governor requires compromise by its definition. And I do think that it's achievable still by the end of this month. I know that, again, maybe I'm a goofy optimist, but I think it's doable. And the conversation of revenue is a fair conversation. And I think this governor's been pretty transparent in one respect. He said, you know, no new revenue before reforms. So to your initial point, do I think he needs X, Y, and Z? And by the way, I don't know which ones they are, and I can't speak and I wouldn't speak for him. But I think that if there's a commitment to do certain things to reform the state structurally for the go forward, I absolutely believe revenue is a fair conversation to have, and designating where it goes is frankly what we ought to be doing.
Well, wonderful. I think this is a very good conversation. We appreciate the time you spent.
We'll have it offline too, whenever you want.
Right on. Thanks for
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.